When I was a younger man, beginning in my mid-teens really, I began searching. In hindsight, I can see that what I was looking for, without fully realizing it, was a community that I could belong to. This search was perhaps partly driven by the breakdown of my immediate family and my drift away from the church, but I had a deep longing to find something greater than myself that I could commit my life to be part of a great story, to contribute to something that would live on once I was gone. And so I tried out different groups. I experimented with different spiritualities. I even lived in a couple of small intentional communities. But in all of this, I could not find a group or community that I was prepared to give my life to. Every community I looked at seemed flawed. They were either too superficial, or too provincial, or too susceptible to each new ideological fashion. I was looking for something more. And until I found it, my life was in a perpetual kind of limbo. I studied some, I worked different jobs, I made assorted friends, but it all felt like some kind of preparation before I would enter into the real work, the real adventure of my life. Little did I know that when I eventually found what I was looking for, I found it in the very place that I had drifted away from, the church. The corrupt, hypocritical, annoying, mysterious, wonderful church. Trust me, I was as surprised as anyone. I think my search for long-term community stemmed from my growing realization that I needed some accountability. The older I got, the more I could see that my own self-wisdom was not enough to keep me on the straight and narrow. I needed others to help keep me accountable to my deepest ideals. The problem was, if this was true for me individually, I came to see that it was also true of us collectively. In each of the various groups I tried out, I could see that our collective self-wisdom was also insufficient on its own to keep us on the right path. As a group, we needed some accountability from outside ourselves. And I felt that a couple of groups I'd been connected with essentially lost their way due to this lack of external guidance. This leads me to the church. One of my main frustrations with Catholicism had been her institutional structure. It just seemed so unnecessarily hierarchical and oppressive. And yet, after having invested myself in a couple of Christian groups that I eventually felt had lost their way, I came to a greater appreciation of the value that such structure can have. The more I looked into it, the more the Catholic framework struck me as internally consistent. So the question became whether or not God was actually part of it. The hierarchical structure of the church has a logic to it. So the question is whether it's a tyrannical logic or if the church is actually guided by the Holy Spirit. At the end of the day, this is a question of faith, and it requires a certain leap of faith. However, as G.K. Chesterton famously said, the church is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. And the more I tried it on for size, the more I came to see the Catholic framework as protective rather than oppressive. Rather than a restrictive force on human freedom, I came to see the Church's magisterium, for instance, as a guarantee of our freedom, offering a living voice of guidance that helps protect us from the tyranny of the self. An analogy might be how the body needs a skeleton. Seen in isolation, skeletons can look terribly rigid. But without them, our bodies would just be a blob on the ground. It is only with a firm skeleton in place that the body is capable of tremendous life and movement. And so, to my everlasting surprise, I found in the Catholic Church the space to pursue my deepest ideals, those things that in my heart of hearts I'd always wanted for my life. That which once frustrated me so much, I had now come to love like it was my own. Despite all her human messiness, I became convinced that the Church is fundamentally built on Christ and sustained by the Holy Spirit, and that her framework facilitates the passing on of precious gifts from God, such as the beauty of the liturgy and the power of the sacraments. I had also come to see the Church as the one human institution that will survive once this world has passed away, because it is also a divine institution. And therefore, by remaining connected to it, any good that God is able to do through me in this life will also survive past the end of time. The world will always struggle to make sense of the Church, given its supernatural foundations. For when the world seeks self-aggrandizement, the church seeks self-donation. When the world seeks prestige, we seek humility. When the world tries to impress others, we seek to be pleasing to God. When the world goes chasing after possessions, we seek simplicity. When the world promotes sexual promiscuity, we promote chaste fidelity. When the world tries to get ahead of others, we seek to serve others. When the world exalts the rich, we have a preference for the poor. Yes, we regularly fall short of our ideals, and the church will always be in need of renewal. But even this has increasingly become a consolation. Again, the older I get, the more I'm aware of my own failings and weaknesses. And so it is a comfort for me that the church is a hospital for sinners as well as a breeding ground for saints. And in the church, Christ has ensured that we are never alone. Firstly, we have each other, a family of over 1 billion who strive to follow Christ and who together feed, clothe, shelter and educate more people than any other organization in the world. Secondly, we have the communion of saints who have blazed a trail before us and who intercede for us still from heaven. And we are called to imitate the saints, to live lives of evident sanctity and joy that by their very existence are the most convincing witnesses to the love of God and the value of the church. Thirdly, and most importantly, we have a God who took the crucifixion and turned it into the resurrection, and who can use even our fumbling attempts at faithfulness for his wonderful purposes. So I would say to my fellow Catholics that you need never be ashamed of your church. The Christian faith truly is, as it has always been, a great hope for the world, and we, the church, are its herald. This is our tremendous responsibility, and it is our tremendous privilege. Well, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, be a saint.